Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. We're bringing you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. That's our special edition of Tell Me Your Story. And then Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. following the news on this station. The programs, you'll hear them streamed live at those times at richarddugan.com. And we podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. We're on YouTube as well, and you can subscribe and then click notifications. So when I post a new conversation, such as this one, you will be able to listen in on that conversation. We have 9 different time slots, 9 different subjects, 9 different guests, 9 different conversations. And I am certain you are going to be able to glean a lot from each of these programs in some form or another. I hope that you will. We also ask if you can support us financially. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, richard@richarddugan.com is the email you want to put in there, richard@richarddugan.com. We also ask that you spend time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, going within and listening to that still small voice. And I will venture that in our conversation today, going within is going to be an interesting adventure for each one of us, should we choose to, as they say in Mission Impossible, if you choose to accept it. My very special guest today is bringing a subject that not everybody is necessarily familiar with. I've been familiar with it for probably 30 or 40 years. And we are very happy to have Sheila Seppi. She is with us. She was born and raised in Virginia. She did everything that was expected of her, and she graduated high school, went to college, and went to work. She got married. She did the usual stuff, had 3 children for over 20 years, nearly 20 years. She worked in a nonprofit world and eventually specialized in, interestingly enough, tourism. You know, I would think, Sheila, that the conversation we're going to have today could maybe qualify under that category of tourism promotion. You also you also did some grant writing, but your world was rocked. First of all, welcome to our program. Thank you so much for being with us here.
Thank you for the invitation. This will be fun.
I'm really looking forward to it. So rather than me going any further into this, I'm going to ask you, when and how was your world rocked?
Okay. That's a big question, so sit back.
All right. I'll just lean back here.
Now, I'm going to tell you, if someone had told this story to me over 20 years ago, I would have laughed them out of my house, because I would never in a million years ever conceived that anything like what I'm going to tell you is possible. You know, I was raised in the church. I was raised to believe, you know, you live a good life, you have lots of friends, you're in service to your community, and when you die, you go to heaven. Those were my conceptions about the afterlife. However, when I fell sick in my 20s, I had been diagnosed with bone cancer, brain tumors, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. I used to walk with a cane. I had been told that I had erythema nodosum and sarcoidosis. I had the beginning stages of multiple sclerosis and had just recently been diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Needless to say, my health was in the toilet and it was just going downward. But I also was in a very dysfunctional marriage. And I had 3 kids and a very demanding job. And so I started getting pretty depressed. I started feeling very hopeless, and I went to bed this way. And what seemed like 7 o'clock in the morning, it felt as if someone reached down, grabbed me by the hair of my head, pulled me bolt right up in bed, and it was as if lightning ran through my body. And then I was in white space. Now, I don't know how long I was in white space, but I do know that I was out of pain. I felt unconditional love. I had a peace that was passing through me that I had not experienced ever, even though I had experienced peace, but nothing like this.
Mm.
Some people say it was a near-death experience. I don't know what it was, but what I do know is that as my vision started coming back, first it was my peripheral and then it was my frontal vision. And as I sat up in the bed and was looking around, everything was different. I didn't know how it was different, but I knew everything was different. When I got out of bed and I walked past a mirror on the wall, I just stopped because I was mesmerized. Now, I don't know. It felt to me like I was looking out at someone else through someone else's eyes. So I was looking at myself through someone else's eyes is all I know, because I mean, I was just mesmerized. I was looking at my hair and my teeth and my eyes. And, the next thing you know, I'm feeling the carpet under my feet. And it's like, it was very gushy, and it was like I'd never felt carpet before. And as I went out to go into the kitchen, all of a sudden I was filled with past life memories. And the significance of that is I didn't believe in past lives. I thought it was hooey.
Mm-hmm.
I did not believe in it. Also, I remembered healing modalities that I had never studied, and universal truths began to just really flood through my mind. Some of the information that's taken me 23 years to unpack. I mean, I had no foundation for this. I had never read a metaphysical book. I had no idea what was going on. Everything was new, everything was different, and all of a sudden I had this amazing energy that I had not experienced in forever. My food preferences had changed. The
Mm-hmm.
way I dress immediately changed. The way I articulated myself changed.
Mm-hmm.
My thought patterns began to change. And within 3 months, I left that dysfunctional marriage. And within another 3 months, I found my first spiritual teacher. By chance, I was not looking for a spiritual teacher. I actually was looking for someone to validate my experience, because I had taken psychology. I thought I was going to be a psychotherapist and, chose something else. But I had enough psychology to be dangerous because I was self-diagnosing myself.
Right.
And I was
Right.
convinced that I was having some type of a psychotic break. And because I couldn't remember anything, I did remember my children. I knew the husband, and I remembered my parents and sister, but everyone
Mm-hmm.
else, it was like a blank slate. So I thought that I was having some type of a trauma related experience, some type of a disassociation. And so I was going to this lady to be validated in my thoughts and hopefully receive some kind of medication that would put me back in my dysfunctional lifestyle, because that's what I was used to. But no, 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 no. That's not what happened. After a couple meetings, and maybe it was even the first or second, she mentioned to me that she said, honey, I can't tell you that you're having a psychotic break. I can't tell you anything you came in here wanting me to tell you. But what I can tell you is I believe that I need you to research something called walk-ins.
Mm.
And she started explaining walk-ins to me. And I'll be honest, I was furious. That was the last thing in the world that I needed to hear, was some kooky idea about how one soul leaves a body and another soul comes in, because I didn't believe it. The second she told me, it was like, absolute, this is a crazy, I'm leaving. But this lady knew exactly what she was talking about. And by the time I had left the office and got to my car, I was calling for my next appointment, because in just a matter of 5 minutes, that truth really hit home.
Mm.
And from there, all of my different experiences began to unravel. I started actually seeing this lady on a regular basis, and unbeknownst to me at the time, she was of Hopi lineage, and she had been
Oh.
charged by Chief Dan Evahima to take out the Hopi teachings to the people. And so she invited me to come and sit in what's called a women's circle. And it was there that I began to learn about shamanism, which was really my saving grace, because I learned how, first off, about grounding, because man, I was up here in my head. So I learned about grounding, how to root into the earth, pull that energy up. I also learned that these people that were walking around and the voices that I were hearing were my spirit guides, that it was not just fictitious things I was hearing and seeing. And the freaky thing about that is everything they told me, if I followed it, worked out perfectly. And so it was in these spaces that I really began to connect with these guides. And one of the first questions that I ask them is, am I a body snatcher? What happened to the soul that was in this body? And they began to explain to me that when we incarnate, we come in with what's called a birth plan. And we have all of it's like your business plan, your goals and your objectives of what you hope to achieve in this lifetime. And this business plan for the other soul was up. And had I not taken the place of that other soul, the children would have ended up going down a totally different path, and things would not have progressed well for them in their lives. And so at first I started thinking, oh, okay, so I've come in to raise these children and etc. But they also told me something. They said, you're a way shower. And I'm like, well, what do you mean I'm a way shower? And they explained that there are certain souls that have come to this planet specifically, like you, to share messages that will allow people's consciousness to expand, that will allow their hearts to open, and that will lead them into a higher vibrational state, and they'll be able to disengage from third dimensional reality. And so I didn't understand any of that. But I believed them and I worked with them. And at first I thought I had to do everything. I was the way shower. I had to do all this stuff. So I studied all kinds of different modalities, because they also told me people cannot drop into the essence of who they truly are when they're in pain. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. So then I had to become a healer. And then I had to, I thought I had to be open 7 days a week, and I thought I had to do spiritual teachings all the time. And I thought, and that was the problem. I was doing the thinking, I wasn't listening. And so a way shower had nothing to do with me being the one to show the way, but to contributing to this message of awakening. And so from there, I have a business called Spirit Way Wellness. And I also have recently, within the last year and a half, started what's called the Conscious Awakening Network, because this is where people actually come, they put up their video content, and they're able to share their stories of awakening, conscious expansion, ufology, you name it. And that was the way showing that they were talking about. I didn't have to do it all. Now I still contribute and I do that. But just by listening to my guides and following this path that they had laid out for me really allowed me to walk a life that has been very joy-filled. It's been very, I've had lots of contentment. I may not always have what I want, but I've always had what I needed and more. And so that's my story of being a walk-in. I have a tremendous connection with my guides. I do, lots of healing work, but as far as being a walk-in, there are so many different types of walk-ins, and I didn't even realize that. I thought everybody had the same experience that I did, because I'm what's called a soul exchange walk-in, but there are many different types.
I want to ask, and I hope I have the pronunciation correct. Who is Nawila?
Nuela.
Nawela.
Okay. Nuela. That was the original name that I was given. When we individuate from the source consciousness, we go into various realms. We may go into a planet, etc. In my case, I started in what's called an angelic realm. realm. And I was working in tandem with, as I had come through the Elohim, and we were helping to create other beings. And so that was the vibrational frequency name that was given to me. Recently, I did write the book Walk-In's Cosmology of the Soul, but recently I just finished a book with Barbara Lamb. It's not yet been published, but it's called Cosmic Convergence: The Journeys of Walk-In Starseeds and Hybrids. Because in that book, I was able to expand much more about the walk-in, because when I first released the book Walk-In Cosmology of the Soul, I was seeking community, and I've now found community. So in this book, I'm hoping to provide community to people. I'm hoping that they will be able to, find and resonate truth for them. And when I was writing it, my collective, which I can talk about later, but my collective told me that what I come from is called the Yani. So my name is actually Nuela, or it's Yani Nuela, because Yani is the collective and I am the individuated aspect.
Do you have any information as to, maybe more along the lines of a percentage, of the 8.1 billion people on the planet who are walk-ins?
I've never asked for a percentage, because I do know that there are more and more types of walk-in experiences that are occurring for people, not necessarily the soul exchange. And by that, what I mean is, so many people are doing such a vast amount of spiritual work now, and they're raising their own vibrational frequency. Well, when you raise your vibrational frequency, you're meeting the vibrational frequency also of your soul. So if you're raising higher and higher, you can bring down and anchor in more of your own soul essence. Now, whether that's from your oversoul, whether it's from the master oversoul, whether it's from your higher self, wherever it comes from, you're able to bring that in and anchor it. Sometimes a walk-in has a portion of their soul that leaves and more of their higher self comes in. That too is called a soul infusion, but that's a soul infusion walk-in. But many people today, because of all of their work, are having these soul infusions. And I was talking with, several people, and, we talk about the collective conscious and how it raises, the vibrational frequency, and then it raises the vibrational frequency of the planet, etc. And there is what's called the human consciousness light grid. And so from above, our galactic families, spiritual beings, whomever is looking down on us, can actually see the vibrational resonance of this planet, and they can see the light. And I know that light is continuing to build. I know more and more people are waking up as starseeds. And I know more and more people are waking up to the fact that they're human hybrids. And the reality of it is, very, very few, maybe only 20% of the people that are on this planet right now would be what you would call an earthling that came in with Gaia and has gone through every incarnational cycle, or they were a source seed, came directly from the source energy and incarnated on this planet. So there's only about 20%. That means 80% of us are either walk-in, starseeds, or hybrids.
And it doesn't necessarily happen that a walk-in will enter due to, let's say, a near-death experience. Can it happen if the soul, we'll call it the originating soul,
The natal soul.
the natal soul, gets to a point where they say, you know what, it's not so much, this isn't what I signed on for, because it is. This is what you signed on for. But it's just gotten too much. I just stop the world, stop the earth. I want to get off, kind of thing, right?
Right.
Talk to us about, in terms of your experience, because it doesn't sound to me like it was necessarily like life-threatening, horrific, and so forth. And I want to actually back that question up to ask, is there some kind of a line, a queue of souls that want to be walk-ins to help that particular entity in the natal entity, saying, okay, hey, I'll take over for you. Nope, I'll spell you. All right, I got your 6 and go ahead and take off, kind of thing. Because it seems to me like it was not a mission that they chose to accept, as the phrase goes. And so now their individual natal, shall we say, soul mission has stopped short. It has not been completed, or I don't know, maybe that was part of the agreement as well when they came in through the body, into the body.
There are several different kinds of ways that a walk-in will inhabit a body. And the first and the main way is through a pre-birth agreement. And this is something that's preordained. All the pieces have to be in place because, like in my case, I didn't need to be born. I did not need the teenage years. I didn't even need young adulthood. I needed an adult form in which I could begin to move forward and enact my mission of being here as a way shower.
Mhm.
Other people need to come in and have various experiences. So sometimes there are souls that really just need to complete their own mission here. But when it comes to a walk-in, there's a difference between the mind crying out to be released and the soul crying out to be released. A walk-in only occurs when there's a cry from the soul that goes out, not the mind. Because if it was that case, half of the population on this planet would be gone and we would all be brand new, and poof, the experiment would be over. So it has to be something that comes from the soul. And many times souls do get in here and say, this is harder than I thought. I am not doing it. And they're out. Sometimes that body expires and sometimes, it has a walk-in to come in. But when we look at a walk-in, they're coming here for very specific purposes. Now, some people say, oh, I know somebody and they're a walk-in. They're just such an evil person. I'm sorry. That is not a walk-in. That may be a disincarnate soul that's inhabited that body. It could be a negative entity that is attached, but it is definitely not a walk-in because walk-ins come in from a much higher vibratory plane than the vibration of the current soul that's on this planet, not a lower vibration. It's impossible for a walk-in to do that. Are there souls lined up on the other side to get in here? You betcha, for a lot of different reasons. And one of them being, most people that are waiting to come in are coming to be of service to humanity, to help humanity wake up, to help humanity elevate, because we are one of, the most warring, greediest planets that's out there. And it's here that we have the duality. And that's also a cool experience to come in because we have what's called the false matrix in place. When this planet was originally developed, it was in an organic and a natural state. However, as time went on and the organic perfection was spoiled, it was decided to continue down this particular path. And there began to be what's called overlays onto this planet, whereby individuals could come in, they would forget who they were, and the whole experiment was the idea of waking up and remember, almost like the soul's hide and seek. When you come here, you come in, you don't remember who you are, you're kind of hiding to yourself, and then all of a sudden you wake up and you remember you're a soul having a human experience. That's what everything's about, the experiences of the soul, because this is a planet where souls can really expand and really grow. And everything is just an experience, be it good or bad.
Yeah. You made the comment, and of course, sometimes when I hear certain words or phrases, it makes me think of something. And because of your upbringing philosophically, when you mentioned that you experienced this piece, the first phrase that went through my mind, first of all, I was born and raised Catholic, and I worked for 15 years for a Christian radio station. Something tells me that this was not, which they speak of, quoting from the Bible. This was not the same peace that passeth all understanding that they talk about. This sounds to me like something even higher that, unfortunately, and I say it this way, a lot of folks who are of that philosophy, and again, they're not going to accept what you're saying. They say, no, you're loony too. You're off your rocker, lady. I'll show you. Actually interviewed a gentleman several years ago, born again evangelical Christian, who actually, I guess the best way I can put it is, induced out of body experiences. I said, okay, can you show me where in the Holy Writ where it sanctions that kind of activity? He says it's not there. And I applauded him. I would applaud anybody who chooses to hold on to those beliefs and yet also chooses, like people such as Edgar Cayce and others, to have experiences that are not within the pages of the book.
But they very well may have been and taken out.
I absolutely, absolutely. And I wouldn't disagree there. And I find it so, I mean, when I was working for that Christian station, it was so frustrating to hear the denigration of individuals who had certain spiritual experiences. Oh no, that's not, that's of the devil.
Yeah.
And it's like, wait a minute. The experience that they have had has changed their lives. I mean, to me, this also sounds an awful lot. And as you said earlier, this may also have something to do with the contract, the natal contract.
Yes.
But it also sounds to me a little bit like it's not something that we have a lot of control over, kind of like an alien abduction. If they're going to abduct you, there's nothing you can do. Okay. So I would just sit back. I would just say, sit back, relax, and enjoy it if you can,
Exactly. It's not that bad.
Yeah. Now you did explain your experiences when you came into the body. I say you because you're not the original occupant. You took over the mortgage, so to speak.
Right. Exactly. And had all the clearing up to do.
And so, I mean, again, you did explain this earlier, but I'm just curious as to why you. Now, that's the other thing is when let's say we were to have a natal contract where it says, yeah, when I reach the age of XYZ, I'm going to leave and I'm going to leave the home abandoned and someone else can come in and take over. Or is the entity that is to come in already, shall we say, contracted, written into the contract? Yeah, you, WZZ, you're coming in when I reach age XYZ. That kind of thing.
Right. That is written into many, many soul contracts. Now, for those of you who are having difficulty even believing me, I just say close your ears to this next part because it'll blow your mind.
All right, spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen.
Spoiler alert, just let you know now it's time to go get a drink of water.
There you go.
What happened to me is I was already in what's called a collective. I was in pure spirit. I was pure consciousness, but I had merged with my multidimensional aspects. Now, we all have what's called an oversoul. And if this is the oversoul can be having multiple lifetimes all at once, because remember, all of this is about experience. We can be having it here on Earth. We can be having it in another dimension. We can be having it on another planet. And in my case, we had all come back together and was here. So I was operating from a place of my oversoul. The oversoul was in the Andromedan galaxy. And there's a whole story of what we were doing, etc. But there was this resonant call, is the only way I know to explain it, that came up from Gaia. And she was asking for assistance in helping to raise the vibration of the planet, to help the people of the planet. There's what's called a crystalline grid that surrounds the planet. Now, a lot of people, they call it a lot of different things, but I'm going to call it the crystalline grid because it literally feeds information into the planet. It holds space. Beyond the crystalline grid is the collective consciousness of humanity that goes from the crystalline grid all the way down through the planet, connects every human to every other human. Just like imagine a piece of graph paper. We're all connected in all kinds of different ways. I was working with the collective in the crystalline grid, and we had merged our consciousness even more with all those other beings that were there. Now, within my collective were aspects of the oversoul that had had these other experiences, such as Arcturian, Andromedan, Pleiadian, Mantis, angelic. There were a lot of different experiences in there come together. And to me, when I describe the oversoul, I remember it's like little twinkling sounds. It's light, sound, frequency. It's very diamond-esque in its essence. It's very plasmatic. And so we were there working on the grid when the soul of this body cried out to be released. And it was decided that I would be the individuated aspect to come in. Why? Because coming from the collective, I could bring in a resonance that was already within a frequency match of the current body, because this body was very, very sick and on its way out. So you had to bring just a little bit of a new soul in there that would not fry the biology or the neurology. And so I chose to come in first as an Arcturian aspect because the soul of this body had predominantly Arcturian energy. Within each of us, we have multiple spiritual bodies, and there are frameworks for experiences, existences. There is energy frequency that comes in and feeds this physical body. And coming in as an Arcturian allowed me to be a match until those systems could be rebuilt. As soon as I came in and anchored into the body, things began to shift and to change. First, the neurology of the brain began to change. I was so foggy-minded that I couldn't hardly think. It was affecting my work. All of a sudden, I had total mental clarity. I had energy going through my body. I used to lay on the couch to play with my children. Then all of a sudden, now, hey, let's go outside. Let's go hiking. Let's go to the pool. Let's go down to the park. Let's do this. Let's do that. And the kids were having a hard time keeping up with me instead of me having a hard time keeping up with the kids. So there were lots of shifts and changes that occurred, but only because I was a frequency match. Over the next, I would say next 2 to 3 years, more and more of that collective energy came in because now I operate primarily as an Andromedan, and I work with an Andromedan elder mother who works through me with some of my healing techniques. Her name is Tiamu. And so it depends. Sometimes she feels more like Tiamu. Sometimes it's Tiamu, depending on the frequencies that she's bringing in, because the resonance, even of the words spoken, can affect change. And so this part of the story I know is a real stretch for some people. And believe me, it took me, I've been a walk-in now for 24 years, and it took me a long, long time. Number one, to just wrap my brain around this concept. And number two, to truly, I knew it, but there's a difference in knowing and accepting. And now I have become it. And so having become the walk-in, accepting the mission that I have, operating in the fluency within my collective, because we are constantly in communication, receiving and downloading and uploading. Computer language is so great when you're talking about the soul, because you do download and upload information constantly. Having now become that, it's very different. And I just underwent another infusion of energy about 3 weeks ago, to where it truly anchored in and solidified that other aspect of me, the Andromedan energy.
We're talking with Sheila Seppi, and we are talking about a work that she has made available to you through her website. And we're certainly quite grateful. So when I say the following, and this is, of course, the book Walk-ins, Cosmology of the Soul. There's somebody out, because I don't know why, it's kind of screaming in my head. Somebody is out there saying, lady, you are insane. You are out of your mind. What drugs are you taking? What are you smoking? And so on and so forth. And what is so fascinating to me is, and I heard the way this was put one day by a comedian who says, because and it was sort of an irony regarding the various philosophies. Is the Christians, they believe, and he runs down this long list of the miracles, the virgin birth and the parting of the Red Sea and the burning bush and all this kind of stuff. You people, you Christians choose to believe those things, and yet you have a devil of a time believing a different philosophy, that there's this giant mothership that's just outside of our radar's range that is waiting to pick us all up to take us to Alpha Centauri for all intents and purposes. You choose to believe the former, which is just as outlandish as that. And I think that I would tend to agree with the comedians. Like, why would you discount one when your philosophy teaches something just as unusual and strange? Because again, and I've heard it said too, that when you preface something by saying, I don't mean any disrespect, I don't mean to offend, and yet you're about to show disrespect and you're about to offend. And I'm not. These are my observations. I mean, come on, I was born and raised in the particular philosophies. I mean, you take a look at the Catholic faith, whether it's Eastern or Western. And for example, the locations of Medjugorje and Lourdes. My wife and I even went to a sacred shrine in Ireland, also purported, not as famous, to have miracles based upon this spring water that people would drink. Matter of fact, it was after the first year and a half after her cancer diagnosis, chemotherapy, that we went to Ireland for our honeymoon, and she drank a couple of cups of the spring water, and she's been free and clear of the cancer ever since. The PET scans that she gets, free and clear.
Yeah.
Whether that's a miracle or not, I'm not going to argue. She's free and clear. What difference does it make whether it is or isn't a miracle?
Right. When I first released the book, I used to get people literally writing hate mail, telling me it was going to be burned on the cross in my front yard. And I would try to write to them and explain, but I came to understand that I'm not really here to convince anybody. You
Right.
can choose to believe what you want. This is my experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I know what I know, with every fiber of my being. I remember the soul coming in. I remember the soul anchoring. I remember what it's like to be on the other side. I remember the creation of the birth plans. I remember when the soul leaves the body. You don't make that stuff up.
No.
I didn't even believe in it. And the other thing is, my story has remained 100% consistent since day one, because it had such a profound effect on me. It's one of those things that you will never forget as long as you live.
Mm.
And the changing of my life has brought me to a new understanding that the God I believed in is still the God I believe in, but is much more powerful than I ever ever realize, because I was one of those people. I didn't believe in extraterrestrials. I didn't believe in UFOs. I didn't believe in anything except for what I was told in church. But then I knew it to be true and even more. And so I always tell people, if something I say resonates with you, great. If not, throw it out with the bathwater. It's
Mm-hmm.
up to you. Everyone has their own life path. I just hope that for those individuals who are open to receiving the message that you are so much more than you ever thought possible, and that you are an eternal being, just having a human experience, that can also bring some peace to people, to know that these experiences that we have, as horrific as they are experiences only, and they only have as much value as we are willing to assign to them, and they only affect us to the degree that we allow it. That's why you can put 3 people in a room, they all have the same experience, and everyone walks out with a different experience.
Mm-hmm.
No two people ever have the same experience. It just depends on where you are in the wheel of life and where you are willing to open up and receive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I find it quite honestly, unfortunately, it's extremely hypocritical of those who hold that particular faith to even bother holding that faith and then come out and blast someone else. Because I was constantly reminded during those 15 years at that Christian station about, and this is the way it was phrased, the personal relationship between myself and my God, or between myself and Jesus, and what have you. And I'm thinking, okay, if it is a personal relationship, what business is it of yours?
Right, right,
And I don't have to justify
right.
my philosophy, my position. I tell this story every so often, very brief. My sister, my eldest sister, who's since passed on, we were having a conversation in the wrong place, kitchen, Thanksgiving, mother cooking. And she was, of course, concerned about my salvation and what I believed. And I told her, I said, look, my beliefs of yesterday are not my beliefs of today, are not my beliefs of tomorrow, because I'm still alive. I'm still experiencing. I'm still growing. I'm still learning.
Yes.
And it took me, working for that Christian station, 5 years to release myself from the bonds of the concept, I'll call it, of the devil and hell. The first part of for me was, if there is such a thing and such a person, first of all, he was set up, because God, omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent, knew the story from the beginning to the end. And so none of us really stand a chance at the day of judgment, because, hey, this was all, you set this up. How is this my fault when you set this up? So that's part of it. The other part is, if that's true and we are to then accept the sacrifice, then God's an extortionist. You either believe or you're going to that place with that guy, with that person. And I'm going, wait, God is not an extortionist. You know? So and again, these are only my observations. Once I'll suffix it. I mean no disrespect. I was born and raised in this faith, in this philosophy, but some of these things made no sense to me, which is why I would ask. I call them the heretical questions. Stamp a big old H on my forehead. I'll be wearing it proudly, because if the answers don't make any sense, then I'm going to have a hard time following you and your direction and so forth. When it comes to that particular aspect of your philosophy, and by the way, I was reading through a little more of your bio, and I love this aspect of your, we'll call it your education, whether you want to have it formal or informal. I refer to myself as a metaphysician. I don't have a master's or a bachelor's degree, and I didn't go to the college, but I did not know here in California there was actually a metaphysical university of sorts. Talk to us about that particular element. And I even challenged someone while I was at the Christian station, and I said, Christianity's metaphysical. It's, oh, no, 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 no. I said, do you even know the definition of the word? It's beyond the physical. And that is what Jesus taught. The things he taught us were beyond the physical.
Yeah.
So talk to us about your experiences, especially educationally, in regards to that which is beyond the physical.
Right. Well, again, remember, I was raised in the church, and everything that was happening to me, I was gauging it against my past experiences. How can this be? How can this be? How could I be in a body? Where did this soul go? What happened? I had so many questions. And when I found the University of Metaphysical Sciences, one of the first things that I did was started studying all the comparative religions. And I found that Christianity was not the only religion that talked about God and talked about the 10 commandments. There are all these religions have these threads of truth that intermingle and that are very, very similar. It's just like with the Native Americans. How did the Native Americans not having an internet, not having, any ways of communication with people in Siberia versus people, down in South America, but yet they all had the same philosophical ideas. How can that be?
Yeah.
How can that be? Well, guess what? The plasmatic aspect of Source, God, in its highest form, is like the ultimate internet. You can tap in and tap out anytime you want. You can download, you can upload anytime you want. All of the information of the world is there. We are so consumed with our jobs and with going to the grocery store and who's coming over and what are we doing and how are the kids and blah, 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 that we have disconnected ourselves from the true elements of nature. We're not as connected. I mean, the first time I saw a book about grounding, I was really amazed. Now, it is called earthing, taking your feet off and standing on the earth. My goodness. As kids, we never wore shoes. We were always outside. We were out playing. But guess what, kids today, they're being inundated. And most of us right now, we're being inundated with all of these waves of energy coming at us that were we outside, we would not have. We would be connected into the spirit. So these are some of the things that I was super curious about, and I wanted to see what other philosophical ideas were out there that mirrored mine, what other healing modalities were out there that I could learn. And so, yes, I did receive my bachelor's and also have my master's, and I'm working on my PhD right now. And so I'm always in a constant state of learning. However, that learning does not define my truth. I look at this information and I bring it in, and it's for the edification of what's happening in the world. It's my television, if you will. It's my news. That's how I tap into things. I am not, so many people, they still plug into that news as if it is truth. I'm sorry. Not truth. And here's the thing, take the words away. It's the vibrational frequency of the words being spoken that comes through and permeates and affects each and every individual that's open and listening, because you're in almost like a hypnotic state. You're just sitting there and you're watching, and all of that energy, all those vibrations are coming out and actually affecting your body. I'm sorry. I don't want to hear about things. And people say, oh, you're just a Pollyanna. You've got your head in the sand. It's like, no, actually, I don't. What I choose to do is put my interest in creating a higher vibration for this planet. And that's where I'm going to put it. Why do I, watching television, when did it get okay to watch someone being stabbed to death for entertainment purposes, or being raped, or being stolen from, or any of those kinds of things? I'm more interested in watching Disney, and even some of the Disney stuff is crazy. I mean, I'm just like, I would never let my kid watch this stuff. What is this? What is this?
Yeah.
I don't even put my attention to it. And for those people who do, let me tell you, When you say, but I need to know what's going on, just so that I have this awareness, maybe I can affect change. When you put your attention to something, even if it's negative, like I don't want this to happen, I really don't want this to happen, and I'm talking about this war, and this war is horrible, guess what? You're giving it energy.
Yep.
You're giving it your personal energy. So if you don't want war to happen, stop watching it,
Yeah.
stop talking about it, and stop giving
Yeah.
it energy. Focus on those things of the higher plane.
Yeah.
Focus on the soul. Focus on being in service to humanity. Go out and plant a tree. You know, I just, there are so many things that serve as manipulating forces to all of us, and we don't even know it
Yeah.
till we know. And then once we know, we can't ever shut that door.
Yeah. You know, it's often what happens when we're talking about certain conflicts around the world that, and one in particular, you know, you need to take, whose side are you on? Who do you support? I said, you want to know something? They're both wrong. They're both wrong, you know? And until and it's like, and this particular group of people, these two factions, they've been fighting for thousands of years. It's like, when are you people going to grow up? There was a survey that was taken, and I want to say it was probably 10, maybe 12 years ago, of the young people of these two particular factions. And they were asked about this conflict, this tension, what have you, between the two races. And the kids basically said, we don't want any part of what our parents are doing. We don't want any part of it. And yet they get drawn into it through the tribal nationalism and so on and so forth. And I find it really interesting too. Back in the 80s, I was in my 20s at that time, and I was going through personal growth programs. And that was, I don't want to say it was at the height necessarily, but it was certainly at a fever pitch. Victimhood, victimization. We're all victims. My mother and father, they're to blame for blah, 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 blah. And I'm going through these different programs, learning. And then we went from there to codependency, and then from there to interdependency in the 90s. And I'm thinking, oh, good, we're starting to move along. And then in 2015, June, all of a sudden, victimhood rears its ugly head once again. And bear in mind, this is not my phrase, but the victimhood was coming from the person who has been referred to by his own followers as the Orange Jesus. And when I was working for the Christian radio station back in the 80s, early 90s, during the height of televangelism, what a fiasco that was, and still is actually. But
With the
I kept hearing the same story over and over again about, you know, Book of Revelations, end of the world, you know, the four horsemen, and so on and so forth. And I actually asked somebody if there was something that I could do to hasten the completion of this story, to get to the end and starting a new story, because your story, it's boring as hell. It really is. I mean, I will become the Antichrist if that's what it takes to move this story along. That's why I have very little patience with a lot of these television series that go on year after year after year. It's like, bring it to a close already. Come on. It's almost, I don't know. Again, you probably don't watch television, but there's a series called The Walking Dead. And I couldn't stand watching the show because of the sounds that the zombies made. It's just, you know, real throaty, and it's like, come on. Lost was the same way back. What was it, in the late 90s, I think, or early 2000s? And it went on a heck of a lot longer than it should have. And then the ending was as bad as the end of Dallas, where Bobby was, Sue Ellen, I guess, was having a dream, you know, and all that stuff. It's like, really? Okay, fine. Let's bring it to a close here. Now, our lives, even as we acknowledge our soul's existence, doesn't have an end. It's the journey. Now, with what I've just described earlier, all right, I'm not real keen on the journey because it's like you keep doing the same thing over and over again. And I think a lot of people are starting to get tired of the protagonist-based story. It's like, when the Cold War ended, I'm thinking, oh, wonderful, a whole new footing. Oh, no, we can't go too long without having an enemy. Well, who did we choose? The Middle Eastern countries, the Arabs, Iran, Iraq, and so on and so forth. They were our new enemy. And I'm going, really? But then it dawned on me that the country itself was formed, it was birthed out of violence. And so it's not surprising, but that doesn't mean that we can't change it.
Right.
Is our DNA, does our DNA have anything to do with it? Or is that also part of the contract? Because I know it's just information that makes us who we are. And there are those who teach, and we've had them on the program, that we can rewrite our DNA.
Right.
Is that part of the process of raising the consciousness, not only of individuals and groups, but of the planet?
If you remember earlier, I was talking about a false matrix, and that false matrix has been permeating this planet for 12,000 years. First, it was through a piezoelectric field that went down, but now, because so many can't even speak here. We have so many people on the planet, our genetics have been affected by that, okay? And so the genetics already carry this separation of source thoughts, pain, suffering. You have to work hard if you're going to be anything. You know, you have to do this. You have to. All the shoulda, coulda, wouldas is crammed in that DNA because that's generational belief systems that comes from hundreds and thousands of years of people thinking thoughts, and that actually imprints on your soul. Now, your physical body. We have what's called our human template, and we have a divine human template that came in as part of the human structure. And then we have a blueprint for humanity, and even a blueprint for our own individuality. And within that blueprint, we have what I call the epigenetics of the soul that carries also our soul history, our soul lineage. When you have a fetus, the soul travels in and out many times. Now, some people say the second that you begin the mitosis process, that the soul anchors, not from what I know, what I have seen, and what I understand. So that soul comes in many, many times, and it begins to imprint on that fetus to make that fetus ready to handle this volt of electricity that's getting ready to anchor into the body through the birth process. When that first breath is taken, that soul anchors in. Just like a walk-in, if that soul had not imprinted on that physical body, it would be genetically impossible, and the infant wouldn't make it. That first breath would never come. So once that anchoring in occurs, then you have, throughout the rest of the life, more and more epigenetics of the soul imprinting on the physical genetics that you were given. Within the DNA structure, there are many, many little compartments that I have seen. Some of them light up, some of them don't. Some are called junk DNA, which is the epigenetics of our soul. It has to do with our other lifetime lineages, all those things that are not human that make us who we are. If it were junk, it would not be in our body. How would that even be possible? Our body would have rejected it, and it would have spit it out when we were children. So yes, bringing in higher vibrations, just like I changed the DNA of this body. It went from being on death row to being a healthy body. 23 years later, I'm 63 years old. I take no supplements. I'm on no medication. I am healthy as I can be. 23 years ago, I was on death row. So yes, DNA does change. DNA can be upgraded, and DNA then will make this physical form begin to change. There are many, many vibrational frequencies that are washing across this planet right now. If we are at a certain vibrational level, we hold those frequencies. Those frequencies then imprint on our cellular structure all the way down to the DNA. things begin to shift. When someone has a spiritual awakening, in my opinion, that's when they're unplugged from that false matrix. That's when they begin to see things with different eyes. That's when they begin to have these remembrances. That's when they know beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're a soul having a human experience. They are not a human with a soul. There's a huge difference. So when you have a spiritual awakening, sometimes you'll have all of this ancient knowledge that comes in. Sometimes it's like you're looking around at the world. It's like, this is not right. How can we be this way as a human species? How can we treat each other this way? How can someone tell me what to put in my body? There's something wrong with this picture. That in and of itself is an awakening. That affects change. If you're eating junk food, if you're drinking soda, please don't, if you're drinking soda, do not have aspartame in it. That stuff will kill you.
Well, it actually converts to formaldehyde.
Exactly.
Back when it first came out, I interviewed someone from the funeral home industry. I said, so in the last 10, 15 years, what's changed? He says, we're using a whole lot less formaldehyde. And basically people who drink anything with aspartame, they're basically pre-embalming. Pre-embalming. Continue. I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay. So just think about it. If you are holding and locking into place illness and having that aspartame in the body, you're assuring that that body is going to continue to degrade. My personal belief and my personal experience is as you raise your vibrational frequency, your body is going to get healthier because your frequency shifts, your frequency changes. I know people now, I call it youngering. As more energy is coming onto this planet, people are getting younger and younger. When I was, or let's just say, I'm not even going to say 20 years ago, let's go back 50 years ago. People that were in their 60s, they were old. They were old people. People in their 60s now, that's like the new 40s. My dad is 90 years old. He gets out and he's hoeing the garden. And I mean, honestly, the doctor, we can't even leave him alone because he is so active. They're afraid his heart. Anyway, it's a long story, but he's 90 years old and he's out doing things that people in their 50s do.
Yeah.
And so all of these things have to do with your DNA. Everything that we're talking about has to do with your DNA. Because in my opinion, DNA is the very signature of source energy.
I am 64. My father lived to be 92, and my mother will be 90 this year. And she's still going strong. I mean, I when I talk to her on the phone, her voice is still as strong as ever.
Yeah.
And fortunately, also her daughters, my sisters, my remaining 3 sisters, and I believe my brother are they're there, taking care of her and making sure that she is she is doing well and all this kind of stuff. So it's one of those things where it is a matter of age. I mean, I still think I am only 17, but unfortunately my body says, now, all right, if you want to do this, you need to do it a little differently than you used to, because the physical body does not have the same stamina and so on and so forth. I used to be able to kneel, like, in church, you would kneel on the riser or squat. And no, I'm not, I can't, I don't.
Come to Vail, let me fix that. I know, it's just a little muscle and tendon. We can realign it. You'll be good as new. Good as new.
In other words, you'll put me up on the rack and you'll check the points, the condenser, the plugs, change the oil, the filter, and if I like the work you done, you'll work on my car too, right?
There you go.
There Absolutely. You go. Sheila Seppi is my guest, and we're talking about walk-ins. Is there anyone that you have ever met who, I mean, because the person that told you, you were not aware at the time. You had those experiences and you've already described those, but you didn't connect the dots until someone else said to you, you need to research walk-ins. And it wasn't until then that you realized, oh, I'm a walk-in. Are there people walking around today that don't know that?
Yeah, absolutely there are. And I will say, even though she told me to research it, I was so upset. I never researched it. I've never even read a book about walk-ins except for my own.
Hmm.
Uh, just, yeah, I never have. But the reality of it is there are people that are having phenomenal experiences whereby they begin to feel different. They begin to uh, disassociate from all of the things that they normally were interested in. They may change jobs, they may change houses. All of their personal preferences will begin to change. I know another walk-in, he within 6 months he divorced his wife also, just because there's no resonant frequency. So for those people that are out there that feel like they've outgrown their life, also look around and see if your thoughts have changed, see if your belief systems have changed, because you very well could be a walk-in. Now, if you will go to the website, SheilaSeppi.com, if you sign up to be on my mailing list, you'll get the first chapter of my book free. So you can just read that first chapter. That's about my experience. But there's also a questionnaire on there, and you can then go in and ask yourself. Now, if you answer yes to a majority of the questions, guess what? Chances are you're a walk-in. And you can always reach out to me. There's other people, there's groups. You know, when I first became a walk-in, there was nothing. There was Ruth Montgomery's book that people told me
Oh,
about.
yeah.
I don't want to hear it, la, 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 you know, I didn't want to hear it. And so, yeah. And so there is assistance for people if they have questions these days. So, please reach out. If anything on that questionnaire really resonates with you, or you need more information, let me know. If I'm not the right person for you, I can put you in the direction of someone who can help you.
Is there a misperception that when you're talking about walk-ins, then where people will make the connection, the erroneous connection, that you have some type of mediumship, you're clairvoyant, clairaudient, clairsentient, and so forth. You can talk to spirits or what have you, those kinds of things. Or is that part of the walk-in experience, that when that walk-in enters, they do have that higher level connection with other dimensions and so forth?
Well, because you are coming in from higher dimensions, I mean, when I came in, I was immediately all of those things, and it blew me out of the water. That's one reason that I thought I was losing it, is because I was hearing things and seeing things and receiving messages, and I could touch people and know things about them. Those gifts have remained, but they don't feel as profound as they did when I went from 0 to 100. I
Mm.
know other walk-ins who come in that have, very little clairvoyance or clairaudience, because that's not their mission. That has nothing to do with who they are. And so everyone comes in with their own mission. Everyone has, and everyone here that's listening to this, every one of you have a mission, whether you know it or whether you don't. Simply by holding that vibrational frequency that you have and anchoring on the planet may be exactly why you're here. And so, yeah, there is clairvoyance. Some people, like I speak light language. I always spoke it a little bit, but then after I had this last experience, I mean, it's just like, it just came in and anchored in, fully. So I use that in healing sessions. Some people don't speak light language. Some people who are not walk-ins also speak light language. And so, you really just have to ask yourself and really look at what your mission is in life, and if these are things that serve you. And there's a difference between wanting to do something and having that be part of your mission. Because a lot of people come to me and they're like, oh, I need to be clairvoyant. I want this. I want that. I want. Well, if you want something, you're just drawing to yourself more opportunity to want, because that's what you're putting your energy in. Just like I said, when you don't want war, don't talk about it. Don't think about it,
Yeah.
And so you have to really just be open to receive whatever it is that spirit has for you.
It's interesting how at certain times of the year, the entertainment industry will pump out a dozen sometimes a certain genre of film, like around Halloween, the horror films, the scare the bejesus out of you. And that's never been, I've never been interested in that. It wasn't because I didn't want to be scared. It's just that I had no interest. It just does not, and the drama, television and movies. I just, I mean, when I was a kid growing up, one of the programs I would be sitting right there in front of the TV with everybody else watching. I'd tear up over watching this program called Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah.
It touched my heart. And it was partly
Right.
because in a previous life, as a matter of fact, I went through a life between lives, hypnosis, a few years ago. And my last life was that of a farmer on the prairie, or not so much on the prairie, but on the flatlands along a mountain range. And so obviously there was a connection there. It was really kind of fascinating. We're talking with Sheila Seppi, and we're talking about the book Walk-ins. And I am very grateful for the work that you have done. It's fascinating to talk about these things. And there are times when I think about some of the challenges in my life, and I've said this on more than one occasion, that most all of my life I have felt I've been in the right place at the right time. I listen to my still small voice. I recognize, as I perceive them, the deja vu moments that are like signposts to me, telling me, you don't need to change. You're doing fine. We're just letting you know, keep going that way. Now, I was 7 years old, and I had a day every time I turned around, there was another deja vu moment. As a 7-year-old, I thought I was going to go crazy.
Mm.
I haven't had one of those in a long time, and that's okay. I mean, I kind of miss them. They feel kind of cool. They really do. But it just tells me, okay, you don't need them because you know you're going in the right direction. And so I appreciate your input through the work that you are doing, not only, of course, as a walk-in, but also as a metaphysician. I think it's really a very cool opportunity that you have provided all of us. I also understand you are an ordained interfaith minister director through the Universal Brotherhood movement. I am a minister of the Universal, I think it's the Universal Whole Life Church. It's online, been one for about 12 years. Completely forgot about it 2 years ago. I get an email, congratulations on 10 years. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember signing up for that. So and as well as through what is this here? The First Nations Church, as well as the Ministry and University of Metaphysical Sciences. And then again, I get the impression that none of these letters behind your name, titles, what have you, really, they don't really mean a whole lot to you, other than by having them, it gives those who come to you maybe a sense that, oh, she kind of knows what she's talking about. She's been there, that kind of thing. She's got the credentials that the rest of us, feel like, oh yeah, I need to make sure that they have an MD behind their name or a PhD or what have you. And by the way, I've seen a couple of people going through their dissertations. I actually got to attend, I thought it was the funny way of phrasing it, the defense of their dissertation. And it was really kind of interesting how that unfolded. I feel like I should have my PhD in eclectic studies.
There you go.
I've been doing this for so long. I've so many different subjects with so many different, I mean, I've probably produced in the 45 years, 50, 60,000 programs, which is like, wow. Okay. And they weren't all mine. Don't get me wrong. I haven't done that many, but I've produced other programs for other hosts and so forth. And the guests they bring on, the subject matter that they talk about is so fascinating sometimes. I am blown away by the different subject matter. So I appreciate what you have done in your life in the last 23 years, and what's coming your way in the next 23 years.
Who knows? I mean, who knows what's going to actually happen. I do know that things are shifting and changing on the planet. I do know that I'm here to be in service to humanity and plan to do so, for my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm adding elder care to that list of things that I'm doing right
No.
now and
Mm-hmm.
flying back and forth. And we're, doing these rotational shifts. And even that, as third dimensional as it gets, there's so much joy, and you can step out of that and really look at things from a higher perspective as to how life progresses and how life unfolds. And, I always tell people, they're like, well, aren't you worried about the solar flare? And aren't you worried about this? And aren't you worried about that? And I'm like, I don't see a downside here. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I, apocalypse comes. Yeah, maybe but it's just an experience. Remember, we
Yeah.
are eternal beings. This
Yeah.
whole life is like a boop. That's it. Just a little tiny blip on a
Yeah.
radar screen. And so I really like to invite people and encourage them to drop into the essence of who you are and live life to the fullest every moment. Find what fuels you, what gives you passion, because, there's no reason that we're not living in joy. And I know a lot of people are in pain, and for that, I'm so sorry for that. But still try to find joy in that. Try to find joy that, you're having the opportunity to understand what it's like to have good health or to have a good day. There's so many ways that we can go about finding gratitude. And, when I first started, when, you're talking about all the letters behind the name, I had an entire wall. The wall was 22 foot long. I kid you not, plastered full. I bet you I have 50 certifications in this, that, and the other, trying to prove
Mm-hmm.
that what I was saying had validity. And then they all went down. They're in a little notebook. If anybody ever asks, I'm like, here. I don't even know if I've got it on my business cards. I don't even remember what I've got on my business cards. I probably need to make some new business cards. But, all of those things are important for the sake of learning. They do not define you. You are not the letters. You are not your job. You are not your bank account. You are not the car that you drive. You are what you look at every day in the mirror. That's who you are, that reflection coming back to you. So, what do you see when you
Yeah.
look in the mirror?
Yeah. There are times when I look in the mirror and I'm going, who the heck, who is that? What's he doing here?
Yeah,
And there are times when I'll hit a wall, hit some challenges, which thankfully is rare. And I'm thinking, because again, I've been familiar with walk-ins for a number of years. I want to walk out. Okay, let someone else take over. Okay. I'm just not one. And with my late father, I talk to him a lot, and sometimes I just throw up my hands and say, what am I supposed to do now, Dad? You know? And usually I'll get an impression, which is usually just keep moving forward like you've been doing. You don't have to do anything else but just keep moving forward like you've been doing.
right,
And that's what we all need to be doing. I'm not going to ask you about the outcome of this November. Regardless of how it goes, are you, and I would venture by virtue of the work that you're doing, you are optimistic, but are you indeed optimistic that we're going to get through this victimhood laden period of time that's been, and I have to tell you that I'm not the only one who is just flat out exhausted
right,
by all of this. It's like, just go. Oh, it was like when the Clintons had two terms back in the 90s, and then she popped back in as Secretary of State and all this kind of stuff, and then she ran again and lost. And I'm going, will you please just go away? Okay, you've had your shot, you've had your time, move on. Go do something else. We're tired of hearing this. And I think that a lot of people, because we are so inundated with all of this, that I would have a strong feeling that people are so tired of this, even those who are on that side as opposed to this side, that kind of thing, right? I mean, it takes a lot of energy to maintain victimhood.
Yes, it does. It does. That's why I tell people, I say, I'm probably the laziest person you'll meet because it just takes too much energy to be upset. I'm sorry. It's
Yeah,
not worth my energy. I just don't
exactly.
invest in that. But, as far as the outcome for where we're headed, I do see a positive outcome, but I also see that, we're going to go through some real stormy times. And
Mhm.
I don't think, regardless of what the outcome is, that there's going to be a certain amount of people that's happy with it. And I think
Mhm.
that happiness can cause revolution, whether it's in their own personal lives, within their families, within their thought processes, within their community, within the country. Who knows? But I do feel I have this gut feeling that there's change coming.
Mhm.
And sometimes change is not always the way we would like for it to happen,
Yeah.
but the fact that it is coming
Mhm.
really, brings hope, because that's when more and more people's eyes will be open
Yeah.
and more people will start to see and understand who they are. What are their beliefs? It still amazes me the number of people that, and I stopped doing it. I used to say sheeple. I don't even do that anymore because there are people that are just, it's almost like the lights are on and nobody's home.
Mhm.
They just go through life. They do what they're told. They watch the news. They believe it. They go to
Mhm.
bed. They have an ache and pain. They reach in the medicine cabinet. They're bought into that 3D matrix that we're in. However, there is a different way of being.
Mhm.
And that way of being is beginning to anchor itself more and more. And that human consciousness grid that I talked about is getting brighter and brighter by the day. And when it reaches a certain voltage, if you
Mhm.
will, there will be an entire shift in the perspective of all people on this planet. And we will go from this pure carbon base to carbon silica, and
Mhm.
we have different lives.
Yeah. Well, I myself have been promoting looking for those new ways of living because the old ways don't work. Just look around you. And there are people who, matter of fact, in one interview, I was talking about whether we should be dismantling or knocking down the old institutions to make way for the new. And they said, no, you do not want to destroy the old institutions. What you want to do is go ahead, build the new ones that make the old ones obsolete. Now, there will be resistance by those who are vested in the old
Right.
institutions, but that's always the case. And
Right.
John Denver said in one of his songs, changes somehow frighten me. Still, I have to smile. It turns me on to think of growing old. And I've thought about that probably since I was 11 or 12, how cool it would be. And then I got here and it's like, well, it's still cool. Okay. But I got to deal with this and then the other.
Yeah.
And I love doing these programs because it gives me an opportunity to step out of that real world, so to speak, and explore something new. And I thank you for allowing us to do that. Sheila Seppi, my guest, sheilaseppi.com will be linked to that website. Sheila, I want to thank you so much for being a part of our program. I do have three final questions that I ask all of my guests, but I thank you again for being a part of the work that we're doing here to raise the consciousness, raise the vibration, and get that electricity voltage and even amperage up high.
There you go.
Before I ask you those questions, however, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World, where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for a special edition of Tell Me Your Story, and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m. following the news. We have 9 programs, 9 topics, 9 guests, 9 conversations. I hope that you'll tune into any one or all of them. And at those times, we are streaming live at richarddugan.com. We also encourage you to go to our podcasts on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM. Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations, because what you hear on the broadcast isn't the full interview. It's kind of hard. We're constrained by a time slot. So if you want to hear everything that Sheila has talked about on the program, you're going to need to go to the podcast or the video cast on YouTube. I hope you'll subscribe as well as select notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you can tune in, listen in, and consider what's being said. We hope that you will do that. Also hope that you will support the work that we are doing financially. If you'd like to be a part of what we are doing, you may not have the same kind of outlet that we do. We'll certainly put whatever you send our way to very good use. We have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when you do go there, they'll ask you, to whom are you sending? Richard@richarddugan.com is the email address. That's Richard@richarddugan.com. And we also ask that you spend time during the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, and go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still small voice. With all of that, we now move into our final three questions for our guest, and not even going to go there. Actually, I am. The first question is, who is Nyawela?
Nyawela?
Nyawela. I was going to ask who is Sheila Seppi, but I have a feeling it would be more appropriate to ask of the walk-in, who is Nyawela?
Because we are all just light, frequency, and sound and vibration, that is my original vibrational frequency name, and it is me.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
What gets you up in the morning?
Just life. I love life. I love everything about it. I love drinking my coffee and going outside and looking at the mountains and standing in the sun and walking my little dog, and just knowing that every day that I'm going to be able to help people.
And finally, what was your best day?
I would say my walk-in day. The day that I walked into this body and everything was transformed, because now I've anchored into the fullness of who I am. I'm able to open and share that freely and, have the opportunity to help people every day. So, the birth of my children was very special, and I was gifted with those memories, but a best personal day just for me would be the walk-in day.
Well, we thank you, both metaphysician as well as author, Sheila Seppi, for joining us here on the program. We encourage you folks to get a copy of the book that we've been talking about, the subject matter, shall we say, having to do with walk-ins. It is the cosmology thereof, a cosmology of the soul, and we hope that you'll get a copy by going to the website SheilaSeppi.com. And I thank all of you for tuning in and listening in to Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world. We are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy, because I am. Smokey, I will see you on the other side. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.